Welcome to Road Opener Podcast. My name is Noah Sabuliak, and today I have the privilege of being joined by Ildiko Csamay. Ildiko is an Austro-Hungarian poet, copywriter, podcaster, and tarot reader extraordinaire. With a master's degree in social and cultural anthropology focused on embodiment and ecstasy, she explores the deeper currents of sensuality, creativity, femininity, polarity, and BDSM in her creative work. Welcome, Ildiko, to Road Upper Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here and to talk to you.
Great to have you. So, initially, we got connected through Om Rapani's work. I can't remember exactly how, but we had a conversation about 18 months ago, and I made some notes at that time based on things that you had said. And I knew that I wanted to eventually record a conversation together. And you had me on your podcast a while back, which was a great conversation. But during that first call that we had, you said some things about individuation. And individuation is one of my favorite words and topics. And so I wanted to kind of drag that back into the light here today and just read to you the notes that I took at that time and have you expand on them if you could. So at that time, you said, individuation is to become truly mature. It means cutting cords with the systems you've been brought up in. It also means finding a calling, but then you have to act on it. You have to be able to move through all the resistance that comes up. It means going out into the wild alone, facing the wilderness, exposing yourself to uncertainty. It means allowing yourself to be remade by bigger forces, and it has a lot to do with submission. Would you care to explain a little bit more?
I love to use the word submission or devotion because I am a submissive myself. I am fascinated with my early experiences in BDSM were what inspired me to do pretty much everything I'm doing right now in my life. But I think there's also a great parallel in your work, but you are using the term soul and what it means to follow your soul's calling. And in my personal life experience, following my soul's calling was always connected to an act of submission. I always had to submit to the calling. And if you are somebody who follows this calling, you know that it is not an easy path because your soul it wants to take you to places that are going to activate your entire aliveness, your entire energy, and your energy is going to be amplified and purified. And that is very intense. And it is an act of death. To me, submission or also the experience of ecstasy when you are able to really tap into your soul, it is an act of dying because you cannot do that. You cannot follow your soul's calling or tap into your aliveness without killing your ego first. And it also means that you have to sever the ties to all of the identities you have constructed, because most of us are so in love with our identities and our roles in life, and we think we are our roles. And we are also, most of us are also very masochistic, I find, because most people are so identified and in love with their suffering and their painful life story and dreadful life circumstances. And following your soul's calling requires you to get rid of all of that and also individuate from your conditioning and other people's judgments, because I don't know about you, but something that I have certainly experienced and I'm still experiencing is I am constantly getting misunderstood by other people. If you are a woman like me and you talk about things like dominance and submission, or also like in my case, like my love for dominant men and what true dominance actually means, which is very different than most people think it means. You get judged all the time. You also get misunderstood all of the time, and you become essentially, how to say this in English, people are going to project all kinds of things onto you. And I think that is something, that is a price that you have to be willing to pay if you want to live a life of soul. And you cannot live a life of soul if you are not willing. You have to pay the price of admission, and the price of admission is very high. It means basically dying to your old identity. It means also dying to your parents' expectations, maybe, or society's expectations, and taking on other people's judgments, or also having maybe other people badmouth behind your back because you are living your life differently. And you have to be willing to pay a price of admission. But I also think that whenever you enter the mystery, whenever you have a truly great ecstatic experience, and I know you have also, a lot of the use of psychedelics also for therapeutic purposes. And I think also very much when you are experimenting with psychedelics, you also know that there is a price of admission you have to be willing to pay in order to enter the ecstatic. And you have to overcome yourself in one way or another. And you may also go through fears or like uncomfortable feelings that are coming up before it finally takes you over. And you just merge with the mystery and let it dance through you. And I think that is what it means to be an adult. And I think most people never make these kind of experiences or initiations. I think unless you are a woman, because I think, or I imagine the process of giving birth to a child maybe is very similar to also this realm. But if you are a man and you live in our contemporary society, you almost never have to face yourself in this kind of way. And I think this is also the reason why most men are so immature these days. And also we have, I think, we have the culture of safety, and we worship the psychological safe space. But following your soul's calling, or exploring submission, or entering the ecstatic realm, or dancing with the mystery, these realms are not safe places. Per definition, they are very dangerous. And I think this was something that, for example, was always known by shamans or wise elders, that you do not just fuck around with these things. You go through a process of purification and preparation. And you don't enter them with like the Western mindset of psychedelic culture, which is like, what is in it for me? And let me have this ayahuasca experience, and it's going to be great. And I'm going to heal my whatever PTSD. And after that, I will make a lot of money and it's going to be awesome and blah, blah, blah. That's so stupid, the stupidity. Like, how immature are you? And you have also the complete lack of humility. You should be on your knees. You have to submit to the mystery and respect it. And I think all of these things are lost because we are a very individualistic society, and we worship the self, and we have a cult of the self. And I think the New Age also reinforces this greatly by telling us that we are all these magnificent creators and can like manifest whatever we want. And spirituality is basically like going into a supermarket, and manifesting whatever you want and whatever satisfies your ego. And I think this dimension of submission and devotion and humility, and also being willing enough and humble enough to become a disciple of a tradition and to submit to a lineage of practitioners. This is something that we are really missing. And it's keeping a lot of people in a place of arrested development, and even things like spiritual exploration or psychological healing become tools with which people are getting enabled to stay in this childish place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not, I think what you have to be willing to accept is that this is not a safe space, because life in itself is not a safe space. Life is dangerous if you live it well, but only if you live it well. If you live a miserable life, I can pretty much guarantee that you are also probably more safe
Hmm.
than somebody who lives a life of soul, because living a life of soul is dangerous. It is dangerous to your ego, and it also can be physically dangerous, depending on how you are approaching it. But I think danger is such an important element, and danger is also what makes you come so alive. I think danger and playing around with your fears, that in itself is such an initiation.
Love it. So, in your view, then, an individuated person, an adult, is someone who has put in the right order somehow their ego or who they think they are, their day-to-day personality, submitting to this larger thing, this presence, this mystery, which is ultimately not personal. And so I completely agree. That's how I feel about how I've lived my life. I felt like I never had a choice. And it
Mhm.
seems perhaps that you're the same.
Mhm.
But for
Mhm.
people who have never experienced what's on the other side, like, why would you do that? I'm thinking about the average. So I have many
Mhm.
clients and people who come to me when they're at the edge of the descent and they've lived a certain way, which is this provisional way that we've been talking about. And there's an end of a line. It only can go so far. And in a certain way, that's mirroring what's going on in the culture at large. But they've never experienced this other thing. And it
Mhm.
seems to me like there's a prerequisite, which might be a kind of relationship. Maybe it's to life, to the mystery, to ecstasy for having had an experience already. What do you say to these people? Like, how would you push them down the slide so that it's like, no,
Yeah.
actually, it's not about you. Like, how would
Yeah.
you? Because both of us
Oh.
are on this other
Mhm.
side, right? Looking back and being
Mhm.
like, come on.
It's such a good question, and I'm going to be very honest with you. I have no tolerance for people who are in that place because it is fucking pathetic. I know it has become so normalized that we are coddling people and telling them, yeah, I will support you and I will support you. I will be with you when you take the first step into the mystery. But
Mm,
that's pointless.
mm,
Like that's not it.
mm,
You either decide that you are going to do it no matter what, and it's going to be terrifying. And like no level of preparation or inner work or whatever
mm,
is going to change that. It is always going to be terrifying. It feels like dying. I have had experiences where I have felt so miserable before. My heart was racing. I was shaking. I was feeling so sick to my stomach. My entire energy was like, we cannot do this. If we take the next step, we are going to die. You cannot take this. And this is what it means to be a warrior. I have a very strong connection to the warrior archetype. And this is what it fucking means to be a warrior. And we have lost the energy of the warrior in our society. Men have lost the energy of the warrior. And the warrior is not an archetype of self-reflection or healing or psychological work. The warrior is an archetype of acting on your desire, no matter how you fucking feel. And
mm,
I think this is what is the essence of most martial arts. In martial arts, I don't know, like how, if I know what it is named in German. I don't know if I can pronounce it correctly, but in martial art, there is the principle of pure action. And the principle of pure action means that you fucking stop watering down your actions by, going through this lengthy process of reflection before you act. And should I do this? And is this the right timing? And what are other people going to think? And I'm too afraid, so I may need more time. The warrior energy cuts through all of that bullshit. And the warrior energy is all about acting. get out of your fucking head and just do it. And if you feel like dying in the process, fuck that. That is the warrior energy. And men have lost this energy. And it's so fucking tragic. And this is also why I don't believe in supporting people through that process, to be honest, because it's just this coddling. And I think it's very much a kind of take it or leave it thing. If you want to feel this aliveness, if you truly want to know what it means to be a human, to live a life of soul, you're going to do it. But maybe, maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe you just need to suffer more or live like a shallow, meaningless, pointless, colorless life for longer. And I don't really care. I also am not interested in supporting people through that process because that's not the point of it in my eyes. I have very little understanding for that. And I have, to be honest, I have even less understanding for men who are standing on this precipice because it just makes me lose respect for them immediately. And I personally, I know a lot of men who are living in this archetype of the warrior. And their energy is completely different than the energy of the average guy. And you only get this from acting.
Yeah.
So you have to do it. Just do it.
Stop thinking about it.
Just stop thinking about it. The thinking is really the problem. Or also I have to feel my feelings first. I have to be mindful about what I feel and navel gaze and spend another 6 months marinating in my self-doubt or whatever. And that never gets you anywhere. And this is also the reason why people are so neurotic these days and so afraid and have so much anxiety about the future. Because if you don't act on this impulse, you are training your entire nervous system into a state of neurosis. Because being at peace, being courageous comes from facing your fears and acting. It comes from embracing this warrior energy and stop the reflection process and just do it. Even if you look stupid, even if you stumble along the way because you don't know what the fuck you are doing, but you figure it out while you're doing it. And that also means embarrassing yourself. That means making horrendous mistakes. But that's like all part of it. And that's also what it means to leave your ego behind, because also letting your ego off the hook also means you are willing to embarrass yourself and just do something stupid and crash and burn it all down and then be humiliated even more by other people and their opinions about you. And it means all of that. And it's not glamorous or sexy.
Yeah. So really living with all your chips pushed in to the center of the table.
Yeah.
I've heard this phrase recently, which I love, retard maxing. Have you heard this?
No.
Retard maxing. It's basically what you're saying around stop fucking thinking so much. Retard
Yeah.
maxing, if you're actually just living, you just live. You don't think, you don't put a barrier in between you and life. It seems like there's been this obstruction inserted in between us and life on purpose, perhaps, which is basically this whole mental way of interface. I need this thing in between me. I need this haze. I need this film in between me and life to be safe, which is really just a hedge. It's a hedge. And so what you're saying is, I have no patience for that because there's nothing else to do but just clear that away. Take your sharp sword and cut through it and get going with what your instinct and your eros and your desire is telling you to move forward with.
And that is also the only thing, in my opinion, that will ever change your psychology. I don't know, like, I know so many people who are like doing all of the like psychological work and all the inner work, and they're like working on themselves, like basically all the time. They already have a fucking job and then they come home and they continue working on themselves. And I don't know a single person who got to like a place that I would want to be in through inner work, because it's like being in a hamster wheel, because as soon as you have healed this blockage or this trauma or this like negative limiting belief, the next one comes up. It's like this never ending like thing. It's like, to me, like, I'm not masochistic enough to go through that, and you are never getting anywhere, and you are also not cultivating this like sense of like presence in your body, this kind of like stillness, and this like rootedness in your lower center of gravity. And I think this is what we have all lost touch with. It's just like this, like our, like the lower center of gravity in the body that is underneath our belly button, which is the energy that is connected to the earth, which is the energy of healthy aggression and eros and desire and instinct. And we have completely lost that, and people are just caught in their head or in their feelings and never getting anywhere, because we are completely neglecting this like lower dimension of our energy, which I think is our animal. And the animal is not complicated. And the animal just knows how to move through life and how to survive in the world. And it's very instinctual. And I think it's very connected also to like the warrior energy or the energy of hunting, for example. And we don't really cultivate that. And I think if we are not rooted in that, we become very neurotic and also very easy to influence and push around.
Yes. So I hear you making a clear diagnosis, which I completely agree with. And at the same time, I feel that perhaps for you and I, it's easy to take for granted the connection that we have to instinct. Maybe because it was not filtered out of us, hammered out of us. And I also understand your impatience, because maybe it's actually not your job. Maybe it's not your role. Maybe that's not what you're here to do. But I am still concerned
Yeah,
for
no,
all of
obviously.
us. So I'm like, but maybe it's again, maybe we don't need to complicate it. It's okay. You haven't listened to your instinct for years. You've never had a good connection to it at all. Is it that it's just gone? Is it atrophied? Is that really true? Is it that you have forgotten to actually just be who you already are in a body as an animal, as a being, and you have to keep coming back to that? It's just like, how do we deprogram this? Or are you like, I don't care about that. It's just gonna either happen or it won't.
Yeah, it's such a good question. It's really think about that. So I feel it is to a certain extent a decision that you make. And I personally, I know a lot of people who would rather die than take this step.
Hmm.
There are so many people who would rather die than change their life. And a lot of people die without ever individuating, and they would rather die than go through it, because it is difficult, it is dangerous. If you are not willing to do that, I really think that it's really up to you.
Yeah.
And probably, at least that's what I'm thinking, maybe not everybody is cut out for this path either.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is, I think, one side to see it. I think the other side is also what has always inspired me to go on this path were other people who were just embodying this energy. Because if a person has been through that or is connected to that, there is a certain energy that they exude, a certain presence. There's a calm about them. They do not overcomplicate things. Most of them live very simple lives. There is a simplicity and a groundedness in everything that they do and how they talk. And when you are in their energy, it just gives you this feeling of peace and containment, and you are immediately reminded of what is truly important in life, and that
Hmm.
almost all of the things that we are wasting our mental energy on are completely pointless. They are meaningless. And for me, having people in my life who were living in that way and who were embodying this energy was always biggest inspiration for me, because I was always like, wow, I want to be like that person. And literally all the people that I know who have this kind of energy, they are like, most of them live very simple lives, and they are not doing anything flashy in their life. They are not like the super successful entrepreneur, or don't have an online business. They aren't like making millions or whatever. And I also know people who are super successful, who have really quote unquote made it in life. And there is nothing about their presence or energy that I find inspiring. When I'm around them, like nothing in my system is, yes, this is what life is about. There's always like a frantic vibe that I can pick up on when I'm around them. And for me, like I'm half Hungarian and I'm like deeply rooted in Hungarian culture and also in the Hungarian horse culture. And I grew up around Hungarian horsemen who all had this connection to their lower center of gravity, or who all had this like great masculine presence. And I would be around them as a little girl, even when I was 3 or 4 years old. They would pick me up and put me on a horse and then sit behind me on the horse, and they would just ride into the forest with me and would gallop through the forest with me. And these were like the greatest moments in my childhood. And even as a child, I admired these people so much. And they have this energy and this presence because they spend their entire day outside with big animals in nature. They work very hard physically. They have a very uncomfortable life, but a life that is very rich energetically. And it's very down to earth and very simple. And that's really all what, at least for me, what my life is about. It's this feeling of calm and aliveness and groundedness that I get when I'm around a herd of horses in nature.
Yes.
And I can just soak up this energy. And this is like what life is about for me.
Yes.
And all the other stuff is just more or less empty and meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. It is so far away from most people's experience, isn't it? Like the complete opposite.
Yes. Yes.
Most people's experience is about trying to get somewhere or trying to get away from something, trying to acquire things, trying to look a certain way, trying to always just escape from here, from this.
And also reach your next goal, get
Right.
to the next level, become unlimited, manifest the life of your dreams, become whatever you want. And it's very shallow.
Yeah.
It's very shallow.
I feel so refreshed by your perspective on that. It makes me feel even more relaxed.
Yeah.
And that's the paradox. That's the nuance between deciding with true instinctual, I love the word you use, rage, aggression,
Mhm.
assertiveness, that I am going to live a life of danger. I'm going to live a life unmediated by my head or by anything. It's going to be me and life completely together. That is a certain energy. At the same time, there's a sense of abiding and calm and presence and sitting on the throne of yourself in a certain way. And it's like you've been saying, highly alive. It is pleasurable as well. What do you think about the fact, how do you think about pleasure? How do you think about that particular kind of pleasure, that sensation, or what is that to you?
Pleasure in general. To me, pleasure is a feeling of aliveness in my body. And a lot of things can be very pleasurable that I think on a societal level, we do not associate with pleasure. But for me, for example, the act of crying is immensely pleasurable. You know, when I'm like grieving or I'm like in a state of heartbreak and I'm just breaking down and crying, that to me is deeply pleasurable. I love crying.
Yeah.
And because you tap into this flow of aliveness in your body and you just let it go. But pleasure to me is pleasure comes from being connected to your senses. And I think it is the sign of a healthy person is if they are able to take pleasure from very simple, subtle things, watching a sunset in the evening or feeling the wind on your skin or like smelling the smell of fresh, I don't know, grass or the forest and being able to take pleasure from these very simple things or also I'm a dancer and I belly dance and whenever I have finished a great dance session, I take so much pleasure just from the simple act of walking with and feeling the connection to my pelvic floor and to my head and to my feet. Even that feels so good to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's most people these days, they need so much stimulation to get even a little bit of pleasure or to get off in whatever kind of way because they are in their head all the time and so stressed out that and they're also not connected to their senses and to their body. But when you are in your body, simple things become deeply pleasurable. And but I also have particular views related to pleasure when it comes to men and women because I think as a woman it is essential that you have a lot of pleasure in your life and that you also juice yourself up with pleasure before you get to work or before you create and that you are essentially just having fun in your life and also have a pleasure practice or something. But I do not think that men should have things like a pleasure practice in their life. I'm very against that, or men who are like spending their time on tantra retreats or whatever, learning how to become ecstatic in their sexuality. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with that. But what I have personally also witnessed is that I have seen men change and grow and so much just through the simple act of learning how to really provide pleasure for a woman and really take care of a woman and just devote themselves to a woman and to leading a woman and taking care of her. I think this act of giving to a woman, giving pleasure to a woman is what really changes a man on a deeper level. And I think for men, it's very stupid. I think the stupidest thing as a man that you can do these days is to leak your sexual energy, to have a lot of casual sex, to use the dating apps, to consume pornography, or to just masturbate your life away. That is so stupid. And I can always tell in a man's energy if his sexual energy is leaking or not. And if it is leaking, I find this very unattractive. I'm very drawn to men who are disciplined with their sexual energy, who are able to control it. And so, in this sense, I think there's a huge difference in how men and women should relate to their pleasure, because I think for men, it's much better to just become a provider of pleasure for the woman in your life, be of service to the woman in your life through your leadership and your containment. And to not wallow in your own or have your ecstatic dance practice as a man, that's also such a turn.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I
This is
agree.
how I feel about it. Yeah.
I think there's something about being able to provide pleasure and containment for a woman that is for a man pleasurable, perhaps in a different way, but in the way it requires a very slowed down kind of presence and listening, which you can't fake, you can't
Mhm.
buy. You just have to drop into it. But when it is allowed to happen and you become wider than your head, you're just little where your thoughts are as a man, and you start to really listen with the entirety of your being and your body. There is this silence in myself that I've experienced. It just everything becomes very silent in my head. But elsewhere, there is a lot of signal, and it's pleasurable to listen like that and to be in
Yeah,
relationship to another person in that state.
I can so relate to this because I think the most erotic thing that a man can do, and also why I am a submissive and I'm drawn to dominant men or men who are like excellent doms is because I think the core skill of a dom is just being able to put his attention on the woman. And just, you can really, like, when you are, for example, in a BDSM scene, there is this sense of, I think a lot of people who are not experiencing BDSM think it's super hot and extreme and exciting, but it's actually not. There is a still in the connection. It is so fucking still. And the more still the man becomes internally, if he is able to really silence his mind and just feel into the woman, there's this interesting thing that takes place because if you put your attention on a woman in this way, she will start to express and talk and become so alive and just flow over. I think you can also observe this in our dynamic right now because you are very still and you offer this presence to me. And because of that, I can just pour my heart out and my energy begins to dance. And the more still a man's energy is, the more room a woman's erotic energy or just general her energy and also her emotions are able to come out and dance and flow over. And I think this act of energetic overflow where you just start to just pour it out as a woman, it just comes out of you because you are in the presence of a man who puts your attention on you. That's just, I think that's the greatest thing in the world. And it's also so simple. And it is something that every man should be able to provide to every woman. And it's not necessarily something that is restricted to the erotic dimension. It's also just something you can do in everyday life. Just offer your stillness and your presence as a man. And I think you would be so surprised what women would reveal to you and also how far they would be able to surrender in your presence and trust you. And it also creates this beautiful feedback loop because it also feeds back into the man. A man becomes he becomes bigger and more powerful when he relates to the feminine in this way. Or also, I think it's also the way you relate to the feminine is the way you relate to your soul. And most men have no connection to their soul because they do not have this connection to the feminine. And I also think it is something that a lot of men who are not individuated are also terribly afraid. A lot of men say they want to experience a woman in her full surrender. A lot of men say they want to experience a woman in her sexual ecstasy, but they are not acting that way. Because I have literally experienced this in encounters with men that we reach a certain level of attunement and presence with each other where the energy is really connected. They immediately tapped out of it or started to dilute it or distract away from it by drawing it back up into the mind. And so I think this in itself, just learning how to be with a woman in her intensity is an act of initiation. And if you just watch the avoidance patterns of most modern men and their cowardice when it comes to relating to a woman's emotions. The minute you have an emotion as a woman, the average man is just running. And then men wonder why women lose their desire and their libido in long-term relationships. And it's so simple. It's because there is no separation between her emotional energy and her sexual energy. Her emotional energy is her sexual energy. And if you run from her emotions, what you are teaching her body and her nervous system is that she cannot trust you with her sexuality either. So even if she is going to connect with you sexually, she is never ever going to let go. She's always going to perform for you, but you will never truly experience her. And I think it's all related to the avoidance patterns that men are carrying these days. They are so afraid to just tap into their felt sense and just hold a woman in her intensity and feel the present rock that she can completely overflow and surrender to. And I think this is very also connected to everything we have talked about today. It is a part of our initiation, but I also think that it shouldn't be so hard. Since I started having a podcast where I also talk about my submission and my experiences of submission, I have had so many women reaching out to me and writing very long emails to me and pouring their hearts out about the state of their sexual connection to their men and how ignorant and unwilling men are to meet them in their desire to be led by a man. Yeah, I think there's a lot going wrong here. And there are so many places that men have just become very weak and not trustworthy in an energetic sense to the feminine. And this is really a work I think that men have to do by themselves. I don't think that we as women should or could help or support them.
Yeah.
It's something that they need to figure out on their own. But I also think that as a woman, you need to draw a consequence and you need to draw a line in the sand and be very also assertive in what you will accept and what you won't accept from a man. Because I think most men do not change because they know that their woman is going to put up with it. And I think if you are dealing with a man like that who is not willing to meet you in your depth, you need to let him go.
Yeah.
He should not have a place in your life or in your bed.
I agree. I think I also agree with what you said about women can't, it's not on women to teach men about this and how to
No,
do
it's
it.
not.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's actually a very masculine experience, a very male experience. And it can only be, I think, truly modeled. I don't even know if it can be talked about. The fear of, to me, I experience it as space. The fear of dropping out of the head for once. And to bring it back full circle to where we started, my view is that dropping out of the head has a lot to do with individuation. They seem inseparable to me because when, as a man, when I drop out of my head and I come into relationship with life and what's happening right here, right now, from my fullness in my body and my lower center of gravity, I can't help but be in my own form of submission to life because now I'm out of control. I think it has to do with control. I think there's a fundamental, like something around that fear control thing for men and just how
Yeah.
we just stay so tightly bound and small and constricted in this place that we know we can control or we think we can because we actually can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a small ego death. just like really putting your attention on another person or like sensing into their energy system. On a very small level, this is like an ego death. But I also, as I have said, I have very little understanding. You may be afraid of it. So what? Just do it. Just fucking do it. Like, honestly, I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. It's the only way. Yeah. I really appreciate that. As far as what you were saying around how men, like if they're not in relationship to their own soul, they won't be able to do this. What is your view on the idea of men having an inner feminine? Is that a thing? Do you think women have an inner masculine? Is that a
No,
useful concept?
in my opinion, it's like a garbage concept. I cannot relate to this at all because like when I connect to myself, I don't like when I go inwards, there is not a man that suddenly appears and it's like, oh yeah, I'm also you. Nice to meet you.
Hmm.
I don't, that sounds very schizophrenic to me.
Hmm.
I relate to the masculine as an entity that is completely outside of myself. I relate to the masculine as, for example, I believe in God. And to me, my personal representation of God is like a masculine father figure, like somebody who protects me, who takes care of me, who is there for me, who listens to me, and who I can just put my trust in. And so I think for me personally, it's way better if I like externalize the masculine as this force that is outside of me, but watches over me and is there for me and provides for me. And is also guiding me along when I get lost on the way or whatever. But I also think this idea of women being in their masculine energy is a very stupid concept to the core, because what do we actually mean when we say that a woman is in her masculine energy? What we are basically expressing is that she is burnt out, that she is grinding and hustling and hating her life, or feeling exhausted or depressed or maybe even feeling used. Like, why is that masculine energy? That's just being in a state of survival, maybe, or being stressed out or overworked. But that is not, to me, that what has this to do with masculine energy? And I also think this concept that a lot of teachers are teaching, or also like femininity coaches, that the masculine is this energy that is driven and goal orientated and the chasing energy. That is so stupid. Like, only a man who is like in his Peter Pan archetype has this energy. No man who is actually truly embodied and connected to his masculinity has this energy. This is this chasing, achieving energy is the energy of a boy who is trying to get validated by his mommy. But that, to me, that is such an immature conception of masculinity. And I think it's also the reason why our culture is so confused. But the essence of masculinity is just this grounded presence, this feeling of depth, that when I'm in the presence of such a man as a woman, my energy begins to dance. I become more alive. I begin to express myself in all kinds of ways. Words are flowing through me. This is how I am affected by him. I just start to dance and I start to feel myself more deeply when I'm in the presence of him. But I will never get to this experience of myself with a man who is in his chasing, achieving, get things done, build my empire, become the biggest CEO entrepreneur. That's not it. That's such a caricature of what masculinity is. And I think also because we have this very stupid, shallow concept, people actually find it very hard to access this energy within themselves. Because if you relate to your masculinity through these conceptions, you will almost never get to this place of just deep, grounded presence. You just won't get there.
It's a tragedy,
And
really.
also, yes, and also I think this conception or definition of the energy of chasing, I think what the real truth behind that is that yes, men used to be hunters. That's how we survived in the wild, by hunting wild animals. But a hunter doesn't go out into the steppe or the forest and just runs after things.
Yeah.
He senses into the environment. There is an art to even tracking animals. You connect to them telepathically and you follow your instinct. You have to become very still in your body and then you wait. You wait for hours or for days. And animals, wild animals, they feel your energy. So you also have to, it isn't enough to just sit still. You also have to go quiet in your mind. Your mind has to become empty and present. Because if you're not empty and present, animals will just run from you. And the only way to really get close to a wild animal is to become very empty and very still on the inside. So this is, I think this is the true idea behind this energy of chasing. What it really is connected to is this idea of a man being a hunter. But being a hunter means you are able to sense into your environment. And you have to become so still on the inside. And then you just wait and you wait for this one decisive moment where you actually attack and you collect all of your energy and like, how do you say this in English? Focus it, and then you just go.
Yeah.
But you have to even to being able to decide when this right moment appears, you have to be so still, you have to be so connected, you have to be so present. Because otherwise your timing will be off and you will just die because you will have no game essentially.
Yeah. I see that as man's task
Mm-hmm.
to come back into that at this time in the face of innumerable opposing forces. But ultimately, that really shouldn't matter because I believe what you have been describing is the foundation, the ground of being in men.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. Might be divorced from it, may have grown very far apart of it from it, or never actually be shown how to be in that as a permanent way of being. But it doesn't mean that it's not actually who you are at your core. Yeah, beautiful. This has been a absolutely rich and nourishing conversation, Ildiko. Thank you. Definitely many things for me to think about or not to come back to. And I believe it will be helpful for everyone who listens, regardless of man or woman or what have you. So
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's been great. I'll drop the links to your work in the description. Do you have anything going on right now? Do you have anything you want to direct people to or invite people into?
The problem is that most of my work is in German, so unless you speak German, it's going to be a little bit difficult, I think, for you. But
Mm,
I do offer tarot readings in English, so that is a way that you can work with me. So you can find that in the links that Noah is going to put in the show notes.
beautiful. Once again, thank you very much, Ildiko, for coming on, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Yes, it would be my pleasure. Thank you so much.